Volume 7 C-111. I should have figured it would go that way. Raymond drew his hand along the length of his face and let out a heavy sigh. I'm glad you were there with me, but I'm sorry about your arm. Really. You're an idiot, Raymond. Nu answered him and fell in at his side. An idiot? He asked and cocked his head to look at her. Yes. Maybe she was telling the truth, maybe she really is done with you, but I don't think it's that simple. I've been around humans for a long time. You can be some of the most dishonest people in the world, and sometimes for the dumbest reasons. Nu looked back the way they'd come, in the directions as she had gone. I have no idea what you mean? He asked of her, and Nu looked in his direction again. That was a killer, and she left you alive. Maybe it was because I got in the way, but I'm nothing to her. She could have killed me easily. All I did, really, was prompt her. Not even that, really. She left us both alive, and even offered to do you a favor. Not that I'll let you take it. You're stuck with me, Raymond, whether you like it or not. Nu replied, and, much to his surprise, she reached up and put a hand on his shoulder. I admit I harbored some doubts I didn't even know I held until I saw you bend yourself to her. She's a half-elf. I doubt anybody has ever done anything like that in front of her. But you did. You did. I'm not letting you throw your life away, and I'm not letting you get rid of me, and if you want my opinion, she won't either. She loves you still, even if she couldn't say it. Or? That's what I think. Anyway, Noah said and gave a sad smile to him. Her hand squeezed his shoulder, and when she saw his eyes, she saw the mist there and knew exactly what he needed. Now, how about we go get good and drunk, huh, you and me? She suggested. Are you offering to share a table with me at last? He asked her, and the silence went on as she thought that over in the privacy of her own mind. Yes. But it would be best if it weren't public. You're dressed like a cardinal of the theocracy, she said and pointed toward the way out of the park area that would carry them in sight of the general public again. Once out there, and until we get back to the hotel, I will be the deferential and humble slave again. Raymond almost began to nod by sheer reflex. It was now a familiar routine for them both, but this time he stopped in his tracks. No, he said. Nu took one step farther than he before he spoke, then turned around to look at him, her ears flicking back. What? I said, no. He answered and put his hands on his hips. Your arm got broken saving my ass. You put yourself between me and a black scripture member capable of taking on dragons. I'm done with this stupid game. I'm done pretending for the sake of image, done pretending out of concern that an Aganti assassin might be investigating. I've been writing these letters out to my country advocating for change, and I'm supposed to walk around pretending things are the same, that you're the same? No. No more. No more, no more, no more. Raymond leveled his hand at her and pointed one finger at her chest. You are Nua. He slapped his other hand over his heart, the clapping noise causing birds to take flight in fear at the noise, their twitter ringing out over the isolated pair. I am Raymond. Not at the hotel, not when we're alone in a carriage. Always. Always. He moved his finger to point to the space beyond the high trees of the public park. Out there, in the tavern, in the restaurant, or in some divinity-be-damned council hall speaking with the kings and queens of other lands. I won't even pretend to treat you that other way anymore. I'm finished. Finished. Finished, and I don't give a damn who knows it, he yelled, and lowered his arms to his side before exhaling deeply. Nua's eyes became misty on their own. It's nice to meet you, Raymond. It's nice to meet you too, I guess. In a strange way. He rubbed the back of his head. I'm sorry for yelling. I hope I didn't go too far there. No. No, you didn't. You did surprise me, but, her ears bounced up and down happily, I was glad about what the surprise was. Even if it's meaningless as long as this is on me, Nua said and touched the collar secured around her throat. As long as I have this, I'll never be able to escape Dominic, and I can't defeat the Aganti, let alone the scriptures, so. Raymond reached out, and to his surprise, Nua only raised her chin. She allowed his hand to come to her throat to feel it. He did a number on this one, didn't he? Raymond mumbled more to himself than to her. Most collars aren't enchanted at all, they're basically just practical things. But for people meant to serve as bodyguards or close attendants of the powerful, there's always extra security. But this? Raymond asked rhetorically as his fingers ran along the rim. He stepped closer, His other hand went around her throat where the metal was secured into place. He went the extra mile with this one. Raymond? Nu asked. Her breath was quickening. He was so close. Turn around, please, Raymond asked in a quiet voice. Nu rotated her feet slowly until her back was to him, her head bowed to give him access to the back of her collar, and her heart pounded as Raymond touched her hair to move it aside. That evil son of a bitch, Raymond? Nu asked for the second time. He was so close that she could feel the breath that gave life to his words. Identify magic, Raymond said, and a moment of gratitude came over him that Nua's back was turned so that she couldn't see him wince. Raymond, please. What is it? She asked. Promise me you will be calm, Raymond said. Nua swallowed. I'm always calm, except when I'm angry, or scared, or never mind. I promise I'll stay calm, she said. Your collar wasn't just welded shut at the lock in the back. That unbelievable bastard put a tiny gem fragment in it. Raymond explained, and the Cardinal took a deep breath. You're taking that well. I don't understand. What's the problem? We both knew I was never going to be allowed to be free. I'm meant to be a possession for as long as I live. A gem fragment doesn't change that, Nua said matter-of-factly and then turned around again to face him. It does, when the rest of your life can be ended at any moment. There's a spell in that fragment meant to kill you when it's activated. You were. Raymond put his hands to her cheeks and wiped away the streaks from her earlier emotional moment. It's supposed to burn you alive. Nua reached up and touched the ring around her throat. So, am I safe here or what? I have no idea. Raymond replied, I'm not a magic caster, I can't tell you much about these things beyond what they do. I don't know if it's meant to be activated if the collar is removed, or if it's meant to be just activated if you get defiant or... I don't know. He swallowed hard. So, for all we know, some Aganti caster could just point at me, activate it, and I burn to death in the streets? Nua shivered and sweat sprang to her skin. No. Not like that. I don't want to die like that. Is there anything, maybe, that we could do? There is one thing working in our favor. For some reason Dominic hasn't done it. Maybe he can't from so far away, maybe he has to do it himself, or maybe he's just preoccupied. Maybe this was meant to control me. Maybe he sent you to me thinking I'd come to like you. Use you as political leverage over me. Or maybe not. I don't know. But there is one place we can go that might be able to help. Raymond swallowed again as dread swept over him. Tell me, Nua said, this is my life, if there's something that can be done. The Allfather is a peerless magic caster, the greatest in the whole world. If anyone could break the spell, he could. Raymond suggested. Nua hung her head. Then there's nothing that can be done. What do you mean, nothing? Raymond demanded, his brow furrowed. He's a foreign ruler, and you've heard the same things I have. Some people already consider him to be the seventh god. I wouldn't be surprised if the others aren't already preparing their official proclamations. If you go to him. Nua stopped speaking because Raymond had already started walking. We're going to the arena to meet with the Allfather. If he's not there, we'll go to the residence where he's staying. It won't cost me anything to ask for his help, Raymond said to her without giving her a chance to argue. For a moment she was dumbstruck, and when she saw he was serious, she rushed after him, putting herself at his side again to see if there was anything at all that could be done. Or if it could be done, would be done. But inside, despite her steadying eyes, her heart pounded. I have to prepare to die. There's no way he can offer anything valuable enough to get a hostile king to help him with something like this. No way at all. I'll just enjoy what time I have with the first truly good human at my side in a very long time. At least it'll be quick when it happens. That's better than a lot get, and that will have to be enough for me, she told herself, and as she looked around the bustling city, even depressed as the place was, as tense as it was, with the great park at her back and the vast buildings around beneath a sky that went on forever, she had to think, at least it's a beautiful day out. Volume 7 C 112. Queen Baraha handed the empty cup to the Allfather as they watched the match unfold. The Allfather accepted it and held it out for the servant to fill. He took a sip, and handed it back to the Queen of Frost, who drank in turn. The same cup made the rounds from one royal to the other until it was empty again. It's a nice custom, Iron said offhandedly to the Dragonid. Did you come up with it? Yes and no, Naya said with a sardonic little smile that bared the tips of her fangs. Down below, sword swung against sword and the clang echoed up above, but as the combatants were mere novices with overinflated opinions of their skill, few took real notice of them. Back when I was on suicide duty hunting the forests of the wild for the incursions of demi-humans, I didn't have much on me. Just one bowl and one cup to eat and drink with. So when I took captives and showed some mercy, I would share my bowl and cup with them when sending them back the way they came. Unbeknownst to me, the orcs mistook it for a gesture of good faith and started doing it among themselves, and other tribes took it from them. But really I just didn't have anything else to offer but what I had on me. Naya chortled a little as if she were recalling fond memories, which in the Allfather's eyes, she must have been. Kalka, however, visibly winced until Irons put his hand on her back. The mistreatment her nation leveled against the queen of the demi-humans was weighing heavily on her still. When his hand touched her back, she looked over to her husband and gave him a little wink before reaching over and placing her hand on top of his. "Do you think Gokitis will be impressed with anything he sees today?" Kalka asked, glancing over to her husband's other wife who sat at Irons's right hand. "I don't believe so," Albedo said with a shake of her head. "These are not impressive specimens even for humans. We won't see anything impressive until these are weeded out. At least it won't take too long, even against each other. Most don't last a minute even when they survive." A scream began and was cut short, the roar of the crowd went up, and a body fell down without even a thud. "When does the Elf King fight, Divine Lord?" Queen Draudillan asked. Her eyes were glued to the sands, to the blood, and her thumb was up to her mouth with her teeth chomped down on the nail. "I'm going to face him soon. I want to see him. I need to see him before he dies. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. After the final round of preliminaries for men and women of the Nameless, the winners will face off against ranked adventurers who have shown up. And the Elf King, no, the Elf Peasant, will be here then. He's expressly asked to fight the woman champion from today." Albedo answered. Draudillan began noticeably shaking. "The woman champion. He's going to. Right there, in the arena. In front of everybody." "No, he won't. The Elf Peasant will never rise to the occasion again. Ain's promised, it's already been arranged." My God, I will never forsake you," Draudillan whispered and lowered her thumb. She put her hand to her face and briefly covered her eyes as if hiding it from the daylight, then lowered it again. "Forgive me, friends, comrades. Things. After everything's settled, it seems it's all catching up to me." Much to the surprise of those present, the vicious-eyed dragonid reached out to touch the woman's forearm. Her talons only touched enough to draw the queen's eyes toward her and she said, "I know what it's like, to feel everything is against you, to be hopeless and in pain. Even when you're saved, it's hard to accept it. I still feel the sword sometimes when I sleep. Just do your best, you'll be all right." Thank you," Draudillan said, and the dragonid's talons came away and the shoulders of the small queen went up in a shrug. "For what?" Naya answered as if she'd neither said nor done a thing. Any further conversation was interrupted when there was a knock at the door to their private box. A guard opened the door. "Lord, ladies, Cardinal Raymond of the slain theocracy wishes to see you." "Send him in," Ainz answered without looking back, striking royal dignity pose number 9 and focusing on what lay ahead, indifferent to interruptions at his back. "Allfather," Raymond said as soon as he entered. "I need your help." Ainz stood up from his seat. Even after a few years of this, it was still odd to be taller than most. But he did his best not to look awkward as he came around from his throne. To his surprise, and the surprise of the others who turned to look, Raymond went down to one knee and bowed his head. As the representative of his nation, he was at least nominally the equal to any royalty, yet there he was as if he were a subject. The elven slave at his back seemed no less shocked than the royals at the breach of protocol, but she quickly followed suit to fall to both of hers as well. "Help?" Ainz asked. He glanced from one queen to the other, and they did the same to one another. Confusion, canted faces, and suspicious narrowed eyes were everywhere from the Wolf Queen to the Golden Queen. From dragonid to draconic, and from holy to demon, knowledge of the Cardinal's purpose was lacking. "Yes. This is Nua. She is. Was. Is." He beat his fist down on the stone floor as he went forward, and he relayed everything. From start to finish, from her arrival, to the very moment he presented himself at that moment. "So now you want my help to remove the collar," without killing her?" Heinz asked. "That's right," Raymond replied. "I've been quietly praying to the six to remove her collar. All the way here I prayed and prayed, and they wouldn't answer me." He tilted his face up. His trimmed brown beard still had flecks of dirt from his humbling himself to Zeshi, and a wet spot of blood from tending Nua's injuries, but his eyes were a haunted and confused thing, the pupils expanding and contracting as if a light were brought closer and taken away and then returned again. "I've been a faithful servant all my life, to all the six. I carried out atrocities in their name to protect mankind. Everything they asked of me, I did, and never did I ask a thing. I even helped manipulate a girl I loved like a daughter. And now I ask this one single thing, a trivial thing. Help one captive slave escape a torturous death before it's too late. And what have they said? Nothing. I call on them and they don't answer me. I can't feel them as I did when I was young, and the spell is in a crystal laid by one of our Godkin casters. I can't break it. But because I'm the most powerful magic caster in the world, you've come to me. Heinz deduced. Yes. Allfather, Raymond said, I don't know what I can offer you. I don't have wealth, and because of my letters, I won't have the same political clout that I did. I can. Give him your soul. Queen Draudillan said, and broke from her position. I called on the gods too, the same as you, but they didn't answer. They left me as my maids wept and their bodies became empty, living husks. They bled while I cleaned them and took care of them, and while I bowed and scraped for my life and did my best. The elves helped me, and the gods who supposedly chose me, they did nothing. She hissed the final word with the utmost contempt. Give him your soul, your loyalty, and all the faith you used to give to those dead statues and dead words. Then maybe he will consider it. Queen Draudillan's interjection was pitiless and full of spite. Nua's hand went up to her collar. She swallowed hard and felt the lump press against the inside face of the metal. Raymond looked over to her. And Nua down at he. For a moment he could envision it all so easily, a single moment, her face caught by surprise, her golden hair wreathed in red and orange as fire spread over her body, her lithe, slender, scar-riddled back engulfed in flames, her scream swallowed up as the flames burned even inside her lungs, the swelling inside her body as fat boiled and exploded through her very skin. Dominic. You bastard. Raymond thought, and cursed the man he called a comrade. He took a slow, deep breath, and using the prayer he offered to the six with every step on the way to the Allfather, he all but shouted the prayer, lifting it up to the Allfather of Nazareth. Divine Lord, your servant calls on you for clemency. The punishment for my sins is more than I can bear, and now one innocent of all my guilt is being held to suffer for my guilt. I beseech you, I offer my soul to you. Save her, and I repent of everything I have ever done, and will spend my life atoning for it, no matter the cost. Nua paled as she watched the cardinal give up his faith. I'm going to live? She realized and closed her eyes. Heinz put one finger to the side of her collar. Dispel greater break item. The cracks began almost immediately, like tiny thuds of tiny pounding hammers. It spread around the grey metal, and quickly accelerated, twisting, spreading, and then it shattered into particles of dust. On the sand below, a cry of pain died with its maker. The roar of the crowd went up, and the breeze that blew through the dais picked up the dust of Nua's shattered collar and carried it away to fall into the arena's sands, or be scattered all over the world. I'm free? She whispered. I'm free? She said it a little louder. It was a more serious question. Her hands darted up to her throat. They moved over the span of skin she hadn't been able to touch for almost 200 years. Her eyelids went wide apart. Her vibrant blue sparkled like sapphires caught by the sun. Her body began to tremble as the understanding hit her and she felt the 2 inches of skin that had been kept away from her. Her fingers went all around her throat from front to back as if she could not truly believe it. I'm free? I'm free? I'm finally free? She jumped to her feet and screamed it for all the world to hear. She shouted loud enough that she hoped the slain theocracy itself could hear her. Do you hear that, you bastards? I'm not yours anymore. I'm free and I'll never be yours again. She laughed and began to dance as if there were music playing, as she had not moved since girlhood. The ringing bells of her voice were matched by priceless tears of happiness before she approached her liberator. Though she didn't kneel, she lowered her gaze and put her hand over her heart. Name anything I can do. Anything, and I will do it for you, my god of liberation. He traded his soul for you. Heinz pointed out. I only carried out my side of the bargain. But if you insist on doing something for me. Nua bobbed her head up and down. I do, she said while Raymond slowly rose up to look at the now collarless elf. The elf kingdom has now been conquered by my subordinate. Tomorrow the former king of the elves will be killed. I need an ambassador to the slain theocracy to ensure they withdraw their soldiers from all contested zones and negotiate the return of any stolen lands. Perhaps it is petty, but an elf would, as we said in First World, really stick it to them. Also, you would have to negotiate the return of all prisoners of war taken in the last 120-some years. I'll do it, Nua said with a gleeful ecstasy in her voice. You conquered the elf kingdom? Raymond asked, dumbfounded. Yes. I sent 2 of my servants. It took a few weeks to convince the elves of our power, but they've surrendered now. The taking of Queen Draudilin offended me. I took it as an attack on my kingdom, as she and I were in negotiations which were to be concluded on the journey here. Now the elf king is a homeless peasant, Ein said, and Raymond's mouth opened and closed with no words coming out. I have no words. For everything. But what do I do now? Raymond stammered out, his words like driftwood which moved without aim, all direction lost and with no safe port in the world's storm. Warn your country, because they've run out of allies, and they're going to run very short of labor, Ein said. Now, unless you'd care to watch the match with us, you can go. Ainz extended the invitation, pointing to the rail, and then to the door. I'll go. I have a lot to Nua, will you? He asked. Yes, I will, Nua said, then reached for his hand, and headed for the door, almost dragging him behind her. Volume 7c 113. Was that Raymond's? She wondered when she looked up at the dais. The shouting sure sounded like him. The half-elf couldn't help but hope it was. Maybe I can find it in my heart to forgive him. Eventually. Not yet, but maybe someday. She told herself as her opponent squared herself off on the sands. So, we doin' this what, bitch? Zesh's opponent asked. Zesh glared at the woman across from her. At face value, the woman held a clear, even enormous advantage. She towered over Zesh by a head and a half and was twice as broad. Her muscles rippled and she wore very little, a wrap chains around her waist that hung like a dress, and a crisscross strip of metal across her chest which was similarly secured at 4 points with links of chainmail, but her belly was exposed to reveal her as a wall of muscle. Her arms and legs were larger than most men's, and her hair was cropped short at the top. Her fine, high features and exceptional chest size were the only obvious proof of her womanhood. Until she spoke, at least. Yeah, it's fine. I was just thinking about something, she said and drew her sword. Whatever, I don't care. Just try to entertain me. The behemoth of a woman said, and slid her foot behind her while drawing out a sword from across her back which was almost the length of her body's height, and holding it in front of her with both hands. Nope, she said and yawned. I have no interest in entertaining you. I have something to do. You're a chore, nothing more, and what's more, you're only going to be a bore. She stopped. I did not mean to make that rhyme. You arrogant bitch. The woman snarled, her fists clenched around the hilt of the sword, and after activating a slew of martial arts in a row, the woman charged. The crowd held its collective breath. She dropped her sword, slapped the weapon away, and before the behemoth could properly understand why she lost her grip on her sword, Zesh's right hand struck her square across her face, straight into her ear and sending her bouncing away over the sands until she slid to a stop, smashing into the distant arena wall and going limp. Zesh then waved to the crowd, smiled at them, and gave a bored yawn, openly and obviously covering her mouth with her free hand before picking her sword up and walking out. It's hard to believe that one was an unknown. She looked pretty impressive. No match for me of course, but then, what is? She wondered as she left the arena behind. With that victory, her position the following day was certain. Tomorrow I will get to face him, at long last, the man who ruined my mother's life. My life. Strangely enough though, she stopped dead in her tracks. It was evening now. How long have I been walking? She wondered after the thought occurred to her. The hustle and bustle of the once proud capital was diminishing. Though people were plentiful still, the nature of it changed. People were now in taverns and sitting outside the quick eateries. Sizzling food on outdoor food stations filled the air with smells that were admittedly quite good. Savory meat and sweetened vegetables. 1,000 little tendrils of smoke rose in the air. Strangely enough, All I want to do is go back for Brain and Layali. He will fight Cerebrate soon, as well as Beastmen and any number of other ranked warriors who have come for the prize of an empire's throne. He might die out there. Cerebrate might even kill him. The thought seized her heart, and the warrior returned with heavy feet to the room all three of them shared. Never get attached. Good advice. She thought as she recalled the words of the solo swordsman she'd encountered on the road that day. A little late for that though. Zess, she added to the thought when she opened the door and found Brain down on his knees lacing up Layali's little boots. Mama's back, Layali shouted with glee. Her smile spread over her face, and as soon as Brain stood up, the little half-elf rushed to Zess and hugged her at the thigh with her head tilted back and looking up. Can we go eat? I'm hungry. That would be very nice, Zess said, and ran her fingers through the golden hair of the little half-elf. When Zess looked at him, he read her youthful face like a book. Her black and white eyes, perhaps because they were opposites, were so full of expression, and after traveling the breadth of nations, he could nearly read her thoughts. Let's go. Why don't we grab something at one of the little stands here? It doesn't need to be anything expensive, and it's a nice day out. Plus there's a place I'd like to see, if it's still around, that is. It is that. Okay, we'll go, Zess said, and reached for the door that she'd just passed through moments ago. Brain approached, he held out his arm, and she slipped hers into the crook of his elbow. It was a very small gesture, a nothing, really. Compared to her, he was weak. She could snap him in two with minimal effort. Even though he still carried a sword that was cursed expressly to harm her, Zess knew she could crush him. Yet despite that, as they walked out with Layali running ahead of her, it was hard not to think that it was him holding her up. Why didn't I think about this seriously until now? There's a very real possibility that he'll die. She was quiet and reserved as the evening wore on. They sat around a stone ring where a trio of cooks rushed around flipping and slicing meat and vegetables with the artful skill of any swordsman. Their flashing blades like thrusts, cuts, and parries bounced the metal off the stone with the very lightest of ting noises before coming back around again. They moved from station to station in a circle, taking turns with each dish without missing a beat. As every cook was dressed the same, moved the same, and even looked the same, she quickly became enthralled with the show, as did Layali, who watched with open-mouthed awe as knives and skewers were flipped about. Dinner and a show, I haven't seen this in a few years, Brain said with a winsome smile. You've seen this, Papa? Layali asked. It was actually my idea, Brain said, and the trio stopped what they were doing. Each one caught their knife at the same moment and turned to face him. It is you. I thought so. The trio of chefs said all at once. They stabbed their knives into blocks of cheese to keep the blades ready, and approached where he sat and leaned across the stone counter to hug him. Brain chuckled a bit, but accepted the excessive affection. Wait, really? Layali asked. Brain nodded, sort of. Sort of. Look at this guy, eh? The center chef said, stepping back and waving his arm toward Brain, smacking the man to his right. He twirled his handlebar mustache, and as if they were prompted, the other two did the same. So humble. Yeah, little girl, me and my brothers were working here, not doing a whole lot of business, and listen here, he says to us, you're so good with those knives, you should make a show out of it, and Louis here says, show us what you mean, eh? And then Rui over here says, shut up and let the man show us, and then I says, both I shut up and let the man work. So he does a few little flips with his knife behind the counter, a few people sit down to watch while he makes a few quick dishes, then says since we triplets and all, if we all work together we'd make a really good show. Now here we are a few years later. And we're packed every night. Your money's no good here, Mr. Blue, you eatin' free, you honor your family. Why you talking like we don't know that, do we? Mr. Blue always gonna eat free here. You sit there and enjoy the show, you get our best, you, your wife, and if you get 10 more little uns, they eat in free too. Rui added, 10, nah, even if and it's a hund more, he still eats free, he saved the family business in 5 minutes. Louis quickly topped his brother, and it might have gone on longer, except that Brain coughed and interjected. You know, I'm thankful for the sentiment, but if you don't do something fast, what you're working on is going to burn. Shit. The trio shouted and scattered to their stations to resume the display. You've known somebody in almost every place we've been, except for that one town, Zess said with wonderment, and when Brain's smile broadened, she asked, wait, you knew her too? No, but I knew her family back in Demalbian. They asked me to look in on her without saying anything. We just happened to also need some information, and I had originally planned on stopping by there on the way back," Brain said offhandedly, and Zeshi slumped. "You've seen everything, haven't you? By the tits of the goddess. I never really realized how isolated I'd been till you. Everything out here that I've missed seeing." Zeshi became subdued, and Layali inched her seat a little closer to her. "True, but you're free of all that now. Better late than never, right?" Brain said enthusiastically as the trio preparing food slapped 3 heaping wooden bowls of shredded meat and vegetables down in front of them, along with 3 matching wooden cups. "There you go. Up." The trio struck a pose with one hand close to the bowls and one hand up and back as they harmonized their invitation to eat into what was almost a song, and Layali began to clap passionately with a glowing smile on her face. The dining went faster than Zeshi intended, in part because Layali practically dove into the food, and the enthusiasm of the place was infectious. The only thing to interrupt her train of thought was thinking, that little sticker Brain put on her cheek seems to make her somehow cuter. How is that even possible? All in all, she found it to be the perfect evening. When the food was gone, right down to Layali insisting upon, and carrying out, her desire to lick all 3 plates clean of every scrap of meat juice, they got up to leave. Layali stretched out her little arms and legs, and said, "Carry me. I'm sleepy." Unable to resist, or eager to give in, Brain reached down and picked her up at the waist and bent his elbow so that she was sitting on his forearm and had her arm around his neck. Zeshi put herself on the other side and walked with her arm crooked in his, and Layali was snoring before they even reached the door to the room. "She had a big day today?" Zeshi asked in a quiet voice. "Yes, I took her to a park and let her run around and play. She was a little shy around the children since they were all humans, but I think she's going to be okay. It may take a long time still for her to move past things, but she's young, resilient, and strong. And killing Cerebrate for her is probably going to be a big step forward. Nobody has ever been punished for doing anything to her before. Now that's different, she feels a little safer. That's the way forward, I think," Brain said while Zeshi got the door and let them both into their shared room. "I suppose. But what do I know? What haven't I screwed up since we started traveling?" Zeshi asked and turned to lock the door while Brain went to the small child's bed and drew back the covers to tuck her in. "You're learning, that's all," Brain said with his back to her. "You'll be fine. I made my mistakes when I started traveling alone, and you haven't made the same mistake twice. Except with cooking, that needs a lot of work." He chuckled a little and went to her. "Everything will work out," he promised and put his thumb to her cheek. "Don't be hard on yourself, you're strong, you're not stupid, and you're free. That makes you a lot better off than most people. All you need is experience, and there's plenty of time for that." Whatever Brain intended to say next, he never got the chance. Zeshi lunged forward and covered his lips with hers. She was forceful, urgent, dueling his tongue while her hands were in a frenzy at removing his clothes. He did the same, their boots ending up in a disorderly heap on top of which the rest of their clothing was quickly intertwined. Brain fell back on the bed. That alone broke the kiss, and she was on top of him in an instant, her hands grasping his shaft. She pinned him beneath her and impaled herself to his hilt, gasping at the sudden pleasurable full feeling as her body stretched. She gave a low moan, arched her back, and began to rock back and forth while his hands ran over her contours. He might die. The thought was still there in the back of her mind, and that would make this their last hours together, so she made the best of them, allowing his every intimate touch. Her nipples became hard little pebbles, and when he pulled her down, she gave in, her black and white hair cascading freely around them both like a shroud that still mocked the idea of privacy, but enhanced their intimacy. His mouth found her small breasts and his tongue played over them, circling and teasing them before he began a gentle suckle punctuated by the occasional love bite. When her mouth demanded his again, he freely gave the kiss she craved, and the duel of tongues that neither could loose, before he turned his attention to her left ear. Electric bliss shot through her body as he nibbled, blew, and licked at the part of herself she hated most, turning it into a thing of beauty. How many times she came to a shivering climax while sliding back and forth along the length of his manhood, she lost count, but she knew each time he rose to completion and filled her again with the proof of his want for her. Naive as she knew herself to be, Some things seemed so naturally intuitive as to be beyond doubt. A man might lie with his lips, with his kiss, or with his touch. But a man's cock was never able to lie. His want was undeniable, his urgency, unshakable, and the inner embrace her body offered it, was desired like the thirsty desired water. When their urgent couplings finally ended, and steam rose from the sheets to bear witness to their mating, she rested her head on his chest in silence. Her hand went up and down his side, and she looked at the shut, locked door, and over at the child's bed where Layali slept on. "You don't want me to fight tomorrow, do you?" he asked and rested his hand on the small of her back. "You know the answer to that," she whispered back and tilted her head so that she looked up at him. "Why haven't you asked me not to then?" he pressed. "Because you'll do it anyway, the same as me." She answered him, her hand moving to his cheek. She held it so that he faced her. "You said it yourself, I'm not stupid, I know you'll fight. You want Cerebrate dead for what he did to Layali, and you won't be satisfied unless you kill him yourself." "And I called you naive," Brain chuckled, but she did not. "I'm serious," she said. "And you're right. So thank you for not asking. Let's just enjoy this while we can, and let tomorrow take care of itself," Brain said. The sheets rustled as he put his hands on her hips and brought her over top of him again. "Just do your best," she said as she reached for his shaft. "At everything, it's the only way to live," he said with the seducer's cocky smile up at her, and at that, she had to smile back, before lowering her lips to his to claim them again. Volume 7 C 114. "Dead?" Tia asked and looked over her shoulder. "Dead," Tina said and looked back over her shoulder at her sister. Around them lay the corpses of 100 priests, acolytes, and monks, a field of white robes stained red, confined in a single building. "Very dead," Senna added to their answers as he strolled through the door. He let out a low whistle as their eyes shot over to him. "Mighty impressive. Nothing of value was lost, really, except for my time. You two gave me one hell of a chase." Their eyes turned to the window. "Don't bother. There's no way out. I had this trap laid for you. Even time turbulence can't get through that," Senna said, and picking up a rock, he threw it at the open high window. The empty air of the great cathedral rippled when the rock struck, and dropped back down to crack and roll over the stone floor of the house of worship. "You used priests as bait, evil spearman?" Tia asked. Her kunai dripped blood as she turned to face him. "I did. I don't like priests. Every one of them I've ever seen get to look at She has called her a half-breed, an animal, or worse. They charge an arm and a leg to heal arms and legs, and make people thank them for it. Using them as bait was probably the best use they ever had, since I at least got to get even with them for all the shit they've pulled over the years," Senna said with a shrug and tapped his spear on his shoulder. "Evil Mountain is dead, then?" Tina asked, pursing her lips tight when she asked. "Yes, it was a clean death, and she was very brave," Senna said, politely bowing his head in her memory. Tia and Tina put up their kunai into the guard position and slid their feet back against the nearest corpses, ready to rush. "So, you want to go down fighting? Fine, that's not surprising. May you have better luck in the next life," Senna said and lowered his spear, snapping it into position in front of himself, and not interrupt any more vacations. The joke fell flat. He shrugged, and charged. They moved as a perfect mirror to one another, evidently ambidextrous. Their blades went from hand to hand and they drew two more besides. His eyes, however, followed not their hands, but their shoulders. The tiny subtle motions gave away their intent, and his spear was faster than they could ever dream. Adamantite ranked without a doubt, a credit to common man. How unfortunate it is to waste them this way, he thought, and allowed them the dignity of a continued struggle. Senna's footwork was flawless. He danced atop the corpses as they struggled to get around his guard, disappearing and reappearing out of shadows, in and out of the moonlight. A torch fell from the wall and landed with a clatter as its pitch landed on the robes of a priest and caught, sending flames up within the room. The trio broke apart briefly in an unspoken truce. "How fitting, your friend died amidst a burning garden of flowers, you die amidst a burning garden of corpses. Red blooms all your own," Senna said, and the twins inclined their heads in silent approval. "But, since none of us are fireproof, why don't we end this?" he asked, and it was clearly not an offer, merely a demand given as the fire spread from robe to robe among the corpses of the dead faithful. They jumped forward both at once, Soaring above the spreading fires and above the sea of corpses, they thrust as one, a perfect team to the end, but his spear smacked both aside. Then with dexterity impossible for most, he struck them both in the backs of their heads as he went past. No sooner than Senna landed than he used a burning corpse to brace himself and flipped backward, and while they were recovering, he rotated and shoved his spear through the back of the red-ribboned killer. The other never said a word even though she saw her sister fall. Instead she only rushed him, grabbing the spear, and attempting to drive her kunai into his ear. Tia tasted blood on her throat, looked down, his hand was level, and pierced her throat. His handsome face was expressionless as his fist closed around her spine. She lived long enough to feel him pull, rotate, and fling her into the stone wall. It shattered, sending her corpse tumbling out into the night air. Gathering up all these priests in the name of protecting them all sure was a pain, and Dominic will be pissed. But that's just a bonus. I suppose I owe you one, he said as he walked to the hole in the wall. He put one hand on the broken stone and ducked underneath to exit the building and approached the corpse. You should be with your teammate, your sister, and if I leave you out here, Dominic will want to parade your corpse around like a trophy. I don't like that, he said and looked down at the corpse. The eyes were staring up at the stars. The pools in her eyes that must have been tears, couldn't fall, they were trapped in the now hollow stare-like tidal pools after the sea withdrew. You didn't say what you wanted done with your corpse, but this is what I assume you'd want. If it's not, you can correct me in the afterlife, Senna said to her. Then securing his spear across his back, he crouched, picked up the corpse beneath her knees and back, and carried her back to the hole in the wall. The flames were roaring already, and glass shattered somewhere as the heat caused it to crack and burst. Rest easy. This won't hurt a bit, Senna said to the body, then tossed her close to where her sister lay. There, he said to himself and walked away from the raging conflagration in the dying temple. Now just one quick word to the local Aganti signalman, and I can finally take my time off, and just in time to catch the sweet bark at its best. He licked his lips, and left the fire behind. Amidst the tumbling stone, the Hanzos moved, throwing aside corpse after corpse to select the pair they wanted. Thankfully the pair were small, and even though their skin was charring and eyes were melted and hair was aflame, that made them easy to identify. The gate opened seconds after their call, and they were in Demiurge's lab again. These are the last two, right? He asked, and the Hanzos all nodded. They are. The leader replied. Marvelous, I'm ready to try to resurrect them. If I'm right, a woven spell bound up in spiritually connected beings can enhance the power balance of the mana infusion post-morphomancy and create some greatly enhanced champions. Evil Eye was the one obstacle since she was already undead. She should become a zombie, but if I do the curse transference before the morphomancy and resurrect her before it expires. If I'm right, she should be fine. But then, Pandora's actor said he was fond of her so. Something suitable to his tastes. Yes. I know just the thing. The Hanzos left the Archdevil behind. He hadn't really been speaking to them anyway, only prattling on about incomprehensible things. They on the other hand, only wanted baths, and that was what they went to take, leaving the Archdevil laughing happily behind the closed-up doors of his workroom. This can't be right? Dominic's hands were trembling around the document. It can't be. He repeated. Necronadama, Pontifex Maximus of the slain theocracy, seldom attended meetings of the cardinals, but he did today. It is. The Pontifex said, his aged face broke into a gap-toothed grin. The war is all but over. They sent that to me 3 weeks ago, and ever since then our scouts have been reporting dragons flying overhead, unbeatable monsters fending us off from the Elf Kingdom, and giant, earth-shaking explosions visible from far, far away. But Dominic frowned. You've been so caught up chasing the priest slayers with your Aganti and borrowed black scripture that you haven't paid attention to anything else. We tried to get you to show up to the meetings, we tried to send you updates, but you just wouldn't listen. You must learn to control your temper. Berenice critiqued him with a click of her tongue at the end, but whether Dominic heard her or not, none of them knew. We of the Kingdom of Nazarick do declare the war upon the Kingdom of the Elves for their egregious treatment of our friend, the Queen of the Draconic Kingdom and her entourage, and will regard in like fashion in this matter, the council and government of the slain theocracy, for its duration. Furthermore, we warn that encroachment on captured grounds must be granted by due authorities of the Kingdom of Nazarick wherever our banner shall fly. Dominic read it aloud and then crumpled the paper in his hand before throwing it onto the table. "And you're telling me he's already won?" Dominic demanded. "No. There are still a few outlying areas, or so the envoy says, but they're in the hinterlands. I'm telling you the war will be over before the tournament ends," the Pontifex said matter-of-factly. Maximilian drummed his fingers on the table. "So, what does this mean for our supply of slaves? If we are not taking prisoners of war anymore, that's going to really skew the market. We can still use half-elves. If we make a lot more of them, it may take time, but it's faster than waiting for a full-blooded elf to grow up, and there are a lot of slave catchers we can use if we just take them. We might have to build more fortifications to cut off escapes on the borders. But as long as we're slow, we can still gain the stock we need," Yvonne pointed out. "Don't be disgusting, Yvonne," Berenice said with a sour face. Jinadine kept his face neutral. "If they really do occupy it, that is a problem. You realize the larger issue, don't you? You really think the acquisition of new labor is the problem?" "It isn't?" Dominic asked with a furrowed brow. "No, not at all. We could potentially replace Wood Elf slave labor with Dark Elf slave labor after all. Their plains are just to the north, they don't have large settlements, they're horse people. If we start moving in and building cities, we could expand all the way to the mountains if we took it slow." Jinadine pointed to the map on the wall. "The problem is that we are surrounded. The Holy Kingdom has married itself to the Kingdom of Nazarick. Riastais is now a vassal state. If what we're told is true, then Queen Draudillan was rescued by the Allfather. She's basically his puppet. Malbion was never going to be our ally, the Kingdom of Carni. We almost burned down the Queen's village and murdered her family. They were directly rescued by the Allfather." As he stated each kingdom's name, he moved his finger to point to it on the map, and it slowly became clear to the others. "We are surrounded, encircled by enemies on all sides, and thanks to Raymond's letters, we now know that Zesshi has abandoned us," Jinadine pointed out. "We don't actually know that, he didn't say it directly," Berenice pointed out. "He gushes over her like she's his daughter, but not one letter has mentioned her. She's gone, and if something had happened to her, he'd have said that. His very lack of mention tells us she's turned traitor." Jinadine snapped out the statement with ironclad certainty. "Face facts, we are encircled by our enemies, and we can't count on the use of the Baharuth Empire's might any longer." "Zesshi is probably already dead," Dominic said with a bored, bemused look on his face as he finally pulled the chair out and took a seat. "I intercepted her communication with Senna and sent along her request. But it was tainted. She'll take her own life for us." "And what about Senna?" Berenice demanded. "You know he thinks of her like a sister, not to mention the other Black Scripture members. They won't take kindly to you having her killed if they find out." "Who here is going to tell them?" Dominic asked with a shrug and a smug sneer on his face. His curled lip held as his piercing eyes found one person after another, and each in turn looked away. "Raymond's letters are making the rounds. It looks like he had the story copied a lot. There are underground plays going on all over the place now. Elon and Nu actually got performed in a public park before the Watch shut it down." Yvonne cracked his knuckles, "and the horrors of House Hodge are such that their current heir is having to spend a fortune to keep his reputation from being completely ruined by association." "We'll tell him to stop. Or just silence the elf cunt," Dominic snapped. "That's your fault, Dominic, you sent her to him," Maximilian accused. "What were you thinking? He was too fond of Zesshi. He actually considered her to be human." Dominic slammed his fist on the table. A spider web of cracks spread out from his blow when his fist connected. "I figured if he had a pretty one that was compliant that it would only be a matter of time. Then he'd see eye to eye." "You're disgusting." Berenice spat the words at him and crossed her arms. "Elf or no elf, that is disgusting." Dominic glowered at her, and her gaze did not avert. "Disgusting," she repeated in defiance. "It happens every day, so what? We're the ones chosen by the gods. The rest are lucky they get the privilege of serving us. Raymond should have seen that. He was soft on Zesshi and I didn't want him going soft while going through those heretical kingdoms. I didn't think he'd become a heretic himself. We should have sent another representative. He was a poor choice." Dominic defended himself until his glower became sullen. The Pontifex then spoke up, more reasonably than Dominic. He said, "Regardless, The cat has escaped the bag and we can't catch it to put it back in. For now we'll just ban all plays and books that show the elves as anything other than villains or labor, and hope the fad just passes away. We can use criminals to help supplement the labor. And I have an idea about what to do regarding Demalbian, the beginnings of one at least. But they're so new, they may fall apart on their own. I'd rather not chance it just yet, so we've got nothing. For all this, we've got nothing, Yvonne demanded with a weary sigh.